Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Today, our topic on behalf of NIMS is Evolution of Ophthalmology in the Islamic Era. My name is Dr. Muhammad Shakib. I am a practicing nephrologist in Chicago area and also a NIMS board member, Nagamia Institute of Islamic Medicines and Sciences. Without delay, I would go ahead and start this program, and I would like to introduce first our introduction with Quranic recitation by Alia Herzala. She's the Executive Director of NIMS. Please go ahead with the Quranic recitation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all for attending. I'm going to read inshallah from Surah Al-Mu'minun. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وهو الذي أنشأ لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون وهو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون وهو الذي يحيي ويميت وله اختلاف الليل والنهار أفلا تعقلون صدق الله العظيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Translation. He is the one who created for you hearing, sight, and the intellect, yet you hardly give any thanks. And he is the one who has dispersed you all over the earth, and to him you will all be gathered. And he is the one who gives life and causes death, and to him belongs the alternation of the day and night. Will you not then understand? Sadaqallah al-Azim. Again, thank you for attending, and inshallah it will be a great event. Jazakumullah khair. Thanks.
Jazakallah, Sister Alia. Next, we'll go to our next presenter, which is Dr. Hussein Nagamia. We all know Dr. Nagamia very well, but still a brief for people who are new. He's a chairman currently of our Nagamia Institute of Islamic Medicine and Science. He has been a founder chairman of Islamic Institute of Islamic Medicine. He's the member founder in the committee of ISNA, past president of Islamic Medical Association of North America, and he's a chief emeritus cardiovascular, thoracic, and cardiac transplant surgery at Tampa General Hospital in Tampa, Florida. 2 words for everyone. We are here, reached this milestone and spent countless hours and time and money by Dr. Nagamia and Dr. Tajuddin and other board members in forming this for many years. So without further delay, I would let Dr. Nagamia to please give us word of advice and go from there. Thank you, Dr. Nagamia. Please proceed. Dr. Nagamia?
There you go.
Yes.
All right, can you all hear me now?
Yes, sir.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. It gives me great pleasure to bring this presentation to you, which is entitled The Evolution of Ophthalmology in the Islamic Era. Perhaps all of you know, or some of you may not know, that the Muslims were the foremost that contributed to the development of ophthalmology. In fact, prior to the Muslim civilization, ophthalmology almost did not exist. In the Greek civilization, they had some idea about the functioning of the retina and the eye, but the belief was that actually the eye emitted the rays and then it hit the object, and that's how you saw the object. In fact, Ibn Haytham was the first one to really formulate this concept that the object, the light hit the object, it reflected the light, and then it entered the lens and the retina. And perhaps some of this will be talked about in the later part of the presentation by Dr. Mona and by Dr. Zafer. What I'd like to present to you is that you perhaps may not know, but the first scientist in the world, the very first scientist in the world, was a Muslim scientist, and his name is Ibn Haytham al-Hayzan. And you can Google this question. I mean, it's a universal known fact. If you go to Google today and say, who was the first scientist in the world? The answer will come back and that it is Ibn Haytham. So may I have my next slide? Let me see if I can. Rabia, can you advance the slide for me, please? I don't seem to be able to have the arrow. Yeah. So how do you define a scientist? Well, a scientist is one who actually delineates the scientific method, follows the scientific method. So then the next question is, next slide, please. What is the scientific method? So Ibn Haytham was the first one to follow the scientific method. And that's why he has been given the prime position in history of medicine as the first scientist to develop the point of observation. Now, how do you define a scientist? Let's go to the next slide. So, in order to be a scientist, you have to observe all the phenomena in the natural world. You have to start defining a problem. What exactly is the problem you're looking for? Then you have to promulgate a hypothesis, or you can say that this is the possible thing sequence that is going to lead us to the scientific fact. Then you have to test the hypothesis by experimentation. So you have to devise experiments, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they should be reproducible. If the experiment is not reproducible, then obviously the whole hypothesis is not correct, and the scientific fact is not established. Then you have to interpret the data, and then you have to publish the result. And Ibn Haytham actually did all this, and therefore he has been given the title of the first scientist in the world. So I will rest my case over there, and I will let the other speakers go on. Here's a picture of Ibn Haytham. He was born in Basra in 965 of the Christian era, and he actually did some experiment. He was invited by the Khalifa of Egypt at the time. His name is Al-Hakim, and he went there to build a dam, construct a dam on the river Nile. And it's a very interesting and fascinating story. And I urge all of you to read this, because it's amazing what this guy did, what he achieved, and what he actually has printed. He was the inventor of the camera. He was the inventor of a lot of astrological and phenomena in space, and they are still ascribed to him. So I will stop there, and I'll let the next speaker come on. Thank you very much for having me. And if you have any questions, please do put it in your question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagamia. Jazakallah, and as always, we learn from your 5 minutes. We know a lot of legwork goes behind this, and I'm very thankful that you gave us this introduction. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead with Dr. Mona Kaleem. Mona Kaleem is a MD. She's an associate professor of ophthalmology at Wilmer Eye Institute, Johns Hopkins University. She specializes in glaucoma and cataract surgery. In addition to running a busy clinical surgical service, she is also a dedicated researcher, educator, and a volunteer. Dr. Kaleem is best known for her interest in improving the quality of for glaucoma patients. She has published numerous peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, delivered lectures worldwide on glaucoma. She's also one of the founding members of Alhamdulillah Muslim Ophthalmology Society. She helps to coordinate most of the activities, and as one of the founding members, Jazakallah to Dr. Mona Kaleem for putting her time and energy in coming to this organization as well and presenting today and continue the Muslim Ophthalmology Society. So Dr. Mona Kaleem, please take over and enlighten us. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much, Dr. Shakib and Dr. Nagamia, for organizing this and allowing us to speak about the role of Muslims in ophthalmology. They have made major contributions, and I would like to say that it's not just Muslims in the Islamic era that have made major contributions. There were non-Muslims also who are involved in advancing this field. And I just wanted to briefly touch on the outline of the talk that Dr. Wafai will give. Can we advance to the next slide, please? There are two major dynasties in which the ophthalmology really flourished, the Umayyad dynasty and the Abbasid dynasty. Next slide. And there are many people who contributed. I won't go over all of the names, but the major contributions were really in general ophthalmology, pediatric ophthalmology, ophthalmic surgery, and also in optics. And here there is a list of some of the contributors, some of the people who have really done a lot in our field. Their names are listed here, and the books that they wrote are in bold for any of you who would like to get a chance to read them or check them out. Next slide, please. These are some on ocular surgery, and next slide, please. And last slide, which is just reviewing the names of some of the scientists we work with in terms of optics in the Islamic era. So this is just a brief outline of, again, the talk that Dr. Wafai will give. I'm very excited to hear his presentation, and I will turn the mic back over to Dr. Shakib.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mona Kaleem, for the brief introduction. And now I'm going to introduce Dr. Zafer Wafai. So it'll be not a justice for me to talk about him in a minute. Alhamdulillah, he has achieved a lot, but still I'll do my best. So Dr. Muhammad Zafer Wafai is MD, FICS, FACS ophthalmology. He's born in, mashallah, 1939. He was raised in Aleppo, Syria, and graduated from medical school at University of Damascus in '67. His biography is one rich in ambition, determination, sacrifice, and grit. Dr. Wafai completed his residency at Providence Hospital in Southfield, Michigan, and his fellowship at Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary in Boston, Massachusetts. He was therefore certified by American Board of Ophthalmology. He graduated training, and upon his appointment at Mass Eye and Ear, he also served as instructor in ophthalmology at Harvard Medical School in Boston, Massachusetts. Dr. Wafai also served as chief of Vitrio Retina Division at King Khalid Eye Specialist Hospital in Riyadh from 1983 till 1996, and subsequently established his own practice in Damascus under the name Al-Wafai Eye Center. He has acquired numerous international memberships, accolades, and publications. Among them are Fellow of American College of Surgeons, Fellow of International College of Surgeons, and Fellow of Academic of Ophthalmology, Fellow of Royal College of Ophthalmologists, Canada, and a member of International Society for History of Medicine. Among his honors, the recipient of Honor Award of American Academy of Ophthalmology in 1994, and nominations for King Faisal International Prize for Medicine in 1986 and 87 for diabetes mellitus and prevention of blindness. He is retired from practicing ophthalmology. He continues to devote his time and passion to writing and lecturing about Arab and Muslim contributions to ophthalmology. His most recent publication, entitled The Contributions of Arab and Muslim Oculists to Ophthalmology, was in August of 2019. Please apologize, Dr. Wafai, if I missed anything. But alhamdulillah, mashallah, please enlighten with your journey and what we should know. Please take over the podium, Dr. Wafai.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. O Allah, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, O my Lord, please grant me the grace that I may thank you for the favors you bestowed upon me and my parents, and that I may do good deeds that will please you, and grant me good children. Surely I turn to you in repentance, and surely I am one of those who are Muslims. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to focus my talk on the contributions of Arab, Muslim or non-Muslims, and Muslims who are Arabs and non-Arabs, the contribution of those oculists, meaning ophthalmologists or eye specialists, to the development of ophthalmology. I will set my talk in chronological order, starting with the early 9th century AD and ending with the late 14th century AD. We depend mostly on the Hijra calendar because we did not have the Christian, the Gregorian calendar until the fall of the Ottoman Empire with the French and British mandate. So you will see that there are two dates on each scholar, one Hijra and one Gregorian, but we will depend on both of them, mainly the Hijra, because that's what they used to date. I would like to quote the late Professor Julius Hirschberg, who passed away in 1925, who was an ophthalmologist and the founder of the subspecialty by the name the Geschichte der Augenärzte, Tarikh Tubb al-Ayun. He wrote a 5 volumes encyclopedia about the history of ophthalmology, and the second volume was mainly to the Islamic era. He wrote in his book, the antique Greek Hellenistic world are for us the cores of all sciences, but the Arabian civilization was its conduit. Without the Arabian civilization, this bridge, most of the Greek and the Grecian and the Hellenistic and the Persian sciences would have been disappeared. I will start with this is a book that I wrote recently, and now it's being printed in Kuwait. The name is Al-Kahhalun Al-Arab Wal-Muslimun, the Arabian and Muslim oculists, and their influence on the development of ophthalmology throughout history. I will start our talk with the ancient and the first oculist who wrote the very first known book on ophthalmology in the history of mankind. His name was Jibra'il ibn Bakhtiyashu' al-Kafartabi. I would like you to stress on the word Bakhtiyashu' because this family produced more scholars than any other family in the history of humanity. He wrote one book by the name Risala fi Asab al-Ain, a treatise about the optic nerve. Unfortunately, this treatise lost from we don't know any copy of it right now. But the reason we know about it is that it was quoted by many authors and scholars who followed him until the early 10th century. And then, unfortunately, nobody knows anything about it. The second one is Yohanna ibn Masawih, known to Latin translators Johannes Damascenus. Johannes Massawe was the early wrote 2 books on ophthalmology. He was the private physician to several scholars, several caliphs. He wrote 2 books. One of them is Daghal al-Ain, the alteration of the eye. This book was edited and printed in facsimile type by the late Professor Fuad Sezgin in his institution in Frankfurt University. And we have a copy of it. The other one is the knowledge of ophthalmology profession in questions and answers format. The name is معرفة محنة الكحالين. This book was edited by the late Professor Nashat Hamarni, who passed away recently in about 2.5 years, and was printed and released by in Jordan. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to see his book in print. The second scholar that I would like to mention here died at the end of the towards the end of the 9th century. His name was Hunayn ibn Ishaq al-Abadi. He was the founder of Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, which was created by the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, Abbasid Caliph, and was expanded and flourished during his son Al-Ma'mun, Al-Caliph Al-Ma'mun. He was the chief translator of Grecian, Syriac, and Persian books in several sciences such as medicine, botany, mathematics, and astronomy. The most famous book of his, he had wrote several books, but the most famous one was Al-Ashar Maqalat fil Ayn, 10 treatises about the eye. This book is so important because it contains the very first drawing of the eye and its adnexa in the history of mankind. The book was translated into English and edited by the late Max Meyerhoff and was published in Cairo in 1928. The book was translated into Latin several times, many times. The most famous one is the one which was translated by Demetrius. The name Galeni Liber de Oculus, he thought it was written by Galen, but it wasn't Galen, it was Hunayn ibn Ishaq al-Abadi. The second translation to Latin was Liber de Oculus Constantini Africani, which the translator was Constantinos Africanus, who is originally from Tunisia and migrated to Sicily and became a big translator from Arabic to Latin. He is very well known among the historians. The most important part of this book, in my opinion, is the fact that he refused the theory of vision set forth by Galen. Galen stated that a ray of light gets out of the eye, emits from the eye, to reach the object, and then bounce back to the eye where the vision takes place. And he said this doesn't work, it's wrong. But he didn't put any alternative. I will talk later on about who put the alternative to this theory. This is the book, the edition in Cairo, in bilingual English and Arabic, and I'm so proud to say that I have one of the original books autographed by Max Meyerhoff himself to his friend. The name is Tawfiq Nassim Basha. This is the drawing that I told you a few seconds ago. That's the very first known drawing of the eye, and it's next here we see the extraocular muscles and the two optic nerves. Hirschberg stated Meyerhoff, the editor, stated in the introduction, this is the first book to contain the first known drawing of the eye and its components, and it's much better than the drawings of the European books much later than that. Few years later came the Thabit ibn Qura al-Harrani. Thabit ibn Qura al-Harrani was super genius. He was philosopher, he was mathematician, astrologist, and physician. He wrote one small book by the name Al-Basar wal-Basira, Vision and Perception. This book is really of no big significance, except he mentioned or advocated the treatment of amblyopia by covering. Amblyopia is lazy eye. Some children are born with lazy eye. They can't see with one eye. So he advocated the cover of the good eye in order to force the bad eye to see better. And this is the treatment we still use right now. We patch the bad eye, or the good eye we patch the good eye to force the bad eye to encourage the vision. And then immediately after that, about 100 years later, came Ali ibn Ammar al-Mawsili from Mosul in Iraq, northern Iraq. This is the super genius. He wrote one book, which is a small book also, by the name المنتخب في علم العين وعلاجها, the chosen of the eye disease and their treatment. The most important part of this thing that this contribution of this scholar is his invention of the hollow couching needle. For those who don't know how the cataract used to be treated before the hollow couching needle, they used to make small opening in the junction between the cornea and the sclera, which means between the color part of the eye and the whitish part of the eye. And they introduce couching needle, and they dislocate the cataract into the vitreous cavity. So they open the visual axis for the image to go all the way to the retina, where the picture will be imprinted and then went back to the optic nerve and the occipital lobe for the vision to be seen. This was a really unusual and very innovative invention for Ammar. He invented and made and used a hollow couching needle, very fine needle with opening in the middle, that he used to make small opening, and introduces this needle into the cataract and asked his assistant to aspirate the content, and he was watching the contents being aspirated and sucked out by the assistant. And he put two indications for this cataract, for this technique. Number one, it has to be soft cataract, either congenital or traumatic cataract. Those are usually soft cataracts. It can be aspirated very easily. He mentioned in his book, which is a small book, he mentioned 6 different techniques of cataract surgery. That will tell us how skillful a surgeon he was, and how he used to modify the procedure if need to be. The book was translated into Latin by the name Latin Tractatus de Oculis Canomuselli. I was fortunate enough to find a copy of a book written by Hirschberg in German language, in Deutsch, and his two colleagues, Professor Lippert and Professor Mittwoch. I was honored to edit this book, this English translation of this book, and it was printed in Saudi Arabia 1990. In addition to that, I joined those two books, Al-Basar al-Basira and Al-Muntakhab, in one volume because they were too small and it wasn't it didn't worth to put each one of them in one in different volume. So I put them all together in one volume. Ali ibn Isa al-Kahal, about the same time as Ammar ibn Ali al-Mawsili, is one super genius also. He was oldest, wrote a book by the name Tadhkirat al-Kahalin, Memorandum of the Oculist. It is the oldest preserved and original textbook of ophthalmology. Ali ibn Isa al-Kahal made a tremendous contribution to the ophthalmology by preserving all the Grecian writings about ophthalmology, like Oribasius, Aetius, and Polus. Those books are completely gone without this author. He divided the book into 4 sections. The first section talks about the anatomy and physiology of the eye. And he goes about the anatomy from the front of the eye to the back of the eye, the lids, the eyelashes, the conjunctiva, the cornea, and then the iris and the cataract, the lens. And the second section of the book dealt with the external diseases of the eye. The same thing in the same manner, meaning the eyelids and the cornea and the back. The third section is about the invisible parts of the eye, meaning the optic disc, the retina, and the choroid, and the vitreous. It is considered the Arabian dogma of ophthalmology. This book, the Latin translation of this book, stayed in the main reference to all the practicing ophthalmologists in Europe, in Latin Europe, until the middle of the 19th century. This book survived 800 years as the only reference to the Latin practicing ophthalmologists in Europe. 800 years. Tell me one book in this day and day age survived more than 50 years. Otherwise, another book come and then it will be outdated. Here we have the last translation of this book was in English, was done by Casey Wood, and was published in Northwestern University in Chicago in 1936. Here is the cover page of the manuscript in Library of the University of California, Los Angeles. As you remember, I mentioned you have to concentrate on the family Bakht Yeshua. Here is one of those geniuses of the Bakht Yeshua family. His name is Ali ibn Ibrahim ibn Bakht Yeshua al-Kafartabi. He wrote one small book, but this is the very first book in the history of mankind to be about the anatomy of the eye. Nothing but about the anatomy of the eye. This book was referenced, was not known until the late Max Meyerhof discovered and put it among his books in his list of books in the introduction to his 10 treatises about the eye. The book is, I was able to find this book in Cairo, in the National Library in Cairo, and I edited this book, and it was published also in 1990 in Saudi Arabia. Let's go now to the western part of the Muslim Empire or the Arabic Empire. It was in Spain. Muhammad ibn Qassum ibn Aslam al-Ghafiqi lived in the southern part of Spain. He wrote one book by the name The Guide to Ophthalmology, المرشد في الكحل. The book was translated partially into French by the late Max Meyerhoff, and my wife was kind enough to translate it from French into Arabic. That's where we used it to edit the book when we did that in 1993. The book concentrates mainly on the anatomy and physiology of the eye, and then the author was botanist. That means he was ashab. He used to deal with the plants medications. So he listed in his book 500 different types of plants and their influence on the eye and its treatment, and 59 compounded prescriptions where he can put 2 or 3 or more medications together and treat the eye. He drew 13 surgical instruments in the book and explained the concept of refraction. He did not go in details because he wasn't sure that he is going to, or he doesn't understand the concept of refraction, but he mentioned it in a very brief way. This is the book that I edited and printed in Riyadh, and this is the 2 pages of the manuscript in the Royal Library in Rabat, Morocco. Few years later came Abdullah ibn Qasim al-Hariri al-Ishbili, who wrote one book by the name نهاية الأفكار ورزق الأبصار, The End of Thought and the Promenade of Vision. The book was edited by Dr. Professor Mustafa Sharif Al-Ani and Professor Hazim Al-Bakri, and was published in Baghdad in the year 1993. In the middle of the 13th century came one unbelievable artist, physician, and surgeon. His name was Khalifa ibn Abi Mahasan al-Halabi. He wrote a book by the name Al-Kafi fi al-Kuhl, The Sufficient in Ophthalmology. He quoted 73 books of 41 authors prior to his time. He drew the most precise and beautiful detailed drawing of the eye and its components, and the optic disc, the optic nerve, the optic chiasm, and the optic pathway, and he mentioned here the pituitary gland. He didn't mention, but he put it, and he didn't know what he was drawing. And here are the 2 olfactory nerves. He dedicated one full chapter on the on the eye diseases and in tables. He put one special chapter in the book on the detail on the venesection, which is much better detailed than what Al-Razi and Avicenna wrote. He is the first known to use the magnet to extract magnetic foreign body from the eye. This drawing which I was telling you about is, you will see here the cornea, the iris in color, and the pupil in the middle. Here is the lens, the optic nerve, the optic pathway, and then the optic nerve, the optic chiasm, and here the visual pathway all the way to occipital lobe where the vision takes place. In addition to that, as I said, the pituitary gland behind the optic chiasm, which is the normal location, and here we have the two olfactory nerves on the sides of the brain. This drawing was so beautiful to the degree that the American Academy of Ophthalmology distorted the picture, destroyed it, and used it as its emblem to the annual meeting in 1987 in Dallas, Texas. When I asked the Professor Fred Blody, where did he find this drawing from? He said, I don't know, maybe it's artistic conception. When I went back to Riyadh where I was working, I sent him a copy of this drawing, complete, and I wrote him saying, enclosed, please find the right, the correct drawing and the correct legend. And I told him, I wish you took the drawing by itself completely without destroying it before you. Of course, I never heard anything from him or from the Academy apologizing for this, stealing this beautiful drawing. If the Muslims and the Arabs knew the artistic and the anatomic value of this drawing, they would have made it of gold and put it in every classroom of the medical schools in the Muslim world. But unfortunately, we don't know. Let me show you the most beautiful drawings of the surgical instruments ever drawn. Those are the surgical instruments, 36 surgical instruments that Khalifa drew in his book. Those are from the Istanbul copy. It's in Suleymaniye library under the Yani Jami' subdivision. And here we have in each drawing you have the name of the instruments and the drawing. Let me mention that each yellow thing here is made of gold. I went to a library and I saw those drawings and I took copies of them. And underneath each instrument, you will see how it's used, what it's used for, the name, the drawing, and what it's used. 36 surgical instruments. This is from the Suleymaniye library in Istanbul, and this from the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris copy. There are two different. I think the other one is newer than this one here. I was honored to have this book edited, and it was published in Morocco in the year 1991. Later on, the same time, almost in the middle of the 13th century, came Abu al-Abbas Ahmad ibn Uthman ibn Habibatullah al-Qaisi, who wrote a book by the name نتيجة الفكر وعلاج البصر, the final thoughts about the treatment of the eye disease. This book really doesn't have much to offer in terms of innovations. It's compilation of what was written before him, so he put them in one book. It's worth to read, but it doesn't really have that much innovations. But I was honored to edit this book, and it was published in London. Ibn Nafis, we all know Ibn Nafis is known and famous for his invention and discovery of the lesser blood circulation. Ever since Hippocrates and Galen, the thought was that there is invisible holes in between the two ventricles, where the blood is mixed with the light spirit. Light spirit, they meant by that time the oxygen, what we know now, the oxygen. But they didn't discover the oxygen. It wasn't known by then. And the light spirit, which is the oxygen, is mixed with the blood, and then it went to the rest of the body through the left ventricle. Ibn Nafis was a philosopher, Islamic scholar in terms of fiqh and sharia and in medicine and anatomy. So he evidently he did some dissection, but they never mentioned that because it wasn't allowed to dissect the deceased person. But I'm sure he did some dissection, and he refused the idea of that there are invisible holes between the two ventricles. He mentioned that the blood goes from the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery to the lungs, where it's mixed with the air, and then down with the pulmonary vein to the left atrium, and then to the left ventricle, where it pumped through the aorta to the rest of the body. That's about the anatomy. Let's now talk about the ophthalmology. He wrote one book. It's really a magnificent book. The name is المهذب في الكحل المجرب. I don't know how to translate that to English, but that's the name. This anatomy about the circulation, it came 400 years before Harvey took the credit for discovering this circulation. Ibn Nafis was 400 years before Harvey to talk about the discovery of the anatomy of the circulation. So المهذب في الكحل المجرب is unique book because it's accumulated many thoughts from the previous authors, and then I was able, when I was editing this book, I discovered that he mentioned 27 original thoughts and discoveries in the ophthalmology, be it in the anatomy or physiology or the diseases, the description of the disease, and the surgical treatment of the diseases. And of course, the botany. This is the book that I edited and was published in Morocco in 1988. 4 international symposia were held about Ibn Nafis and this book. One in Morocco, one in London, one in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and one in Damascus, Syria. This one here is from the Vatican Library, the cover page of the Vatican Library, where I brought this manuscript. Salah ad-Din al-Kahal al-Hamwi is another genius and another super ophthalmologist. He lived in Hama, which is in the middle of Syria. He quoted and copying 31 books, starting from Galen to Euclides and Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham al-Hazin, known to the West. He wrote a book by the name Jami' al-Funun, Nur al-Uyun wa Jami' al-Funun, the light of the eyes and the collector of thoughts. The importance of this book is that it's written as summary of the previous authors, many of them. And he referenced each one of them and gave a credit to the original author. He organized the book in chapters and sub-chapters. He drew the first colored drawing of a cross-section of the eye. I will show you in a few seconds. He the first to explain the theory of vision and the strabismus and the relationship between the optic, the refractive error and the strabismus. And if the strabismus, the cross eye or the vertical divergence of the eye. He made a drawing of 18 surgical instruments in his book. This is the very first colored drawing of a cross section of the eye, and its components like the muscles. Here is the lens, the cornea, and And here is the optic disc, which they used to think it was hollow optic nerve. The book was edited and published in 1987. I edited this book and was published in 1987 in Saudi Arabia. Abu Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn Sa'id al-Ansari al-Sanjari ibn al-Akfani, his known name is Ibn al-Akfani, wrote one book which is really a compilation of the previous. His name is Kashf al-Rayn fi Ahwal al-Ayn, uncovering disorders of the eye. The most important part of this book, the most important contributions, is the fact that he described the anthrax as part of the eye diseases, which nobody ever mentioned that before him. He mentioned the knot in the eye, which is, I think he was talking about the chalazion. He mentioned that the pterygium has two layers. The outer layer, I think he's talking about the epithelium, and the subepithelial layer. He mentioned the giant papilla, which is, I think he was talking about chemosis. The first one to describe the ocular migraine. The previous authors and scholars used to talk about the headache, but nobody dared to say this is ocular migraine. He described optic nerve diseases with really good details. He is the first one to mention the day blindness. Of course, they didn't. We see it now in the skiing. People who don't put the goggles to protect the eye, but in their time, they used to travel, and the reflection of the light on the sand, the white sand, into the eyes used to cause the blindness. This is the book that was published in London in 1995. The very last book that I just recently edited, and that's the last book of the golden Islamic era, is Al-Umda al-Kuhliya fi al-Amrad al-Basariyya, written by Sadaqa ibn Ibrahim al-Shadili. He lived in Cairo and died in Cairo. The book is huge, 800 pages. I edited the ophthalmology part and the pharmacist Abdul Qadir al-Khashan edited the botany part of it, about the single medications, and he submitted that as a thesis for to get his PhD degree in pharmacy. The book is huge, 800 pages. We couldn't put it in one volume. I put my volume, it's being printed right now in Beirut, and the other part being edited in Syria by Dr. Kashan. Let me end my talk by a small quotation from the late Hirschberg. From the second volume, the last sentence in his second volume of his encyclopedia. From this retrospective historical evaluation, we have to recognize that the Arabian contributions to ophthalmology are permanent and will forever be engraved in the book of history. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wafai. Really amazing talk. You're so learned and know so much and have reviewed and read so many things, and we all really appreciate that video that you put together. And also, for those who don't know, Dr. Wafai has written a book on this topic as well. He's the expert, truly the world's expert on the history of ophthalmology in the Islamic era. And I also did want to mention that I had the honor of working with Dr. Wafai and a very talented ophthalmology resident, Dr. Zafer, who is at the University of South Florida, to write a book chapter, which will be part of a larger book that Dr. Nagamia is compiling. So thank you. And I wanted to give Dr. Wafai the opportunity to give any comments he had, and then afterwards we'll do questions and answers.
Thank you, Dr. Muna. Assalamu alaikum. I was hoping to say that before my tape went on, to thank the Nagamia Institute for the History, for the Islamic Medicine and Sciences, and to thank all the participants and all the organizers of this beautiful meeting. I hope and pray that somebody will get some knowledge, some benefit, and maybe some enjoyment. The only thing I can think of that I hope that somebody in the future will carry the banner and keep on digging in our history. I'm proud to say that I'm the last historian. If I die today or tomorrow, God only knows, nobody will ever talk about the history of ophthalmology anymore. It was Hirschberg, it was Meyerhoff, it was Professor Nashat Hamarni, and now I'm on my way to go away. So I hope the new generation will get some interested in this field.
Inshallah, I think you're going to inspire some people today.
Hope so.
Thank you, Dr. Zafer, and thank you, Mona, for such a beautiful symposium on the history of ophthalmology in the Islamic times. MashaAllah, I mean, it's such an exhaustive field, but Dr. Zafer Wafai is the authority on this subject. And I'm hoping that, I mean, he has published such a lot of material in Arabic, but we hope that he will be at least encouraging younger people to translate this into English. So the English is the lingua franca at the moment, and that it will be disseminated all throughout the world. I think that, you know, for this very reason, the Nagamia Institute has embarked on publication of a phenomenal book. It's called The Contributions of the Islamic Civilization to the Development of Medicine and Science. It is under preparation. Dr. Zafer Wafai and Dr. Mona are both contributors to the ophthalmology chapter in that book. It comprises of various other fields like orthopedics, general surgery, and you name it, you know. So please look forward to that. It's going to be very fascinating because so far the history of medicine in the field of the Islamic civilization has not been documented well in English. It's been documented in Arabic and probably the other languages, but we want to do it as well. Now, I need to also tell you a little bit of exciting thing that the NIMS Museum in Chicago and Rolling Meadows is going to undertake. We have been very fortunate, mashallah, that a very generous donator and a collector by the name of Naeem Daham has contributed some very rare Qurans, about 100 of them, Qurans and manuscripts, and these are really historical. Some of them are 600 years old or more. We'll be displaying them at the museum, and we encourage that when you visit in Chicago, please make sure that you visit the Quranic Museum. It is the only Quranic museum in the United States. I mean, some of the bigger institutions like Smithsonian, etc., they have 1 or 2 Qurans or 3 Qurans, but this will be a variety of Qurans that will be there. So make sure you visit. And again, you have been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your participation. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know about that. You can be writing. And again, the membership in NIMS is free. You can just go to the website, www.niims.org, and fill out a small form, and you become a member, and we'll keep you informed of the progress as we go along. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thanks. And we actually have a few questions that were presented by our audience. So Dr. Wafai, the first question is from one of your former students, Amit Thalia. He was your student at King Khalid Hospital. And the question he is asking is, do you plan to publish a website citing all of your work, all of this summary of what you've done here? He's asking for a web format so that the new generation can have a chance to read and benefit from all of this, all of these treasures.
I thank Dr. Ahmed for this compliment he mentioned about me, that I'm his mentor. That's very kind of you, Dr. Ahmed. As a matter of fact, yes, I have my website right now by the name zaferwafai.me. But it's only put the books in, like almost like CV almost. But now I'm in process of establishing real big website. I digitalized all my books, all the books, and I'm about to establish my own website to let those people, let the books be available to anybody. For they can print them. I didn't make them. I made them to be printable. So somebody would like to take a book and print it to keep a copy of it, no problem. But when that will be done, I have no idea. It's very costly, especially in this country. You have to hire somebody to put the site together, and then he will have to download each book individually. But all my books will be available, inshallah, before I die.
Inshallah, we hope that you'll be living for a long time to come, Dr. Zafer, so that
Thank you very much,
everybody will benefit from your knowledge and your expertise. And we pray for your long, long life, inshallah.
It's in the hands of the good Lord. We have no control of that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Inshallah. Okay, a few more questions. Dr. Wafai, what is the scientific Arabic name for glaucoma?
Al-Ma' al-Aswad, the black water. They didn't know what it is, but they know that the cataract is white water, Al-Ma' al-Abyad. But the glaucoma, they didn't have a specific name, but after they discovered the tonometer and they checked the intraocular pressure, then they gave it the name of Al-Ma' al-Aswad or Al-Zaraq in Arabic language.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, how was early vitrectomy performed during this time frame?
Although there was no vitrectomy. The very first person to start vitrectomy was Bob Mackamer in Bascom Palmer Eye Institute in 1971. I'm sorry, 1971 and 72, because he invented the VISC, vitreous infusion suction instrument. But after that, there came the Ocutome, which was a revolution to us. When I first started with the VISC, it used to be a big piece of equipment, and you have to hold it by two hands to go inside the eye. But before that, there was no. They used to dab it with the wool or cotton, but there was no vitrectomy.
And several people have asked Dr. Wafai for your email address, and so I posted that in the chat. Also, the link to your website that you just mentioned,
zaferwafai.me.
Very good. And I have
Zaferwafai, one word, .me.
So Dr. Wafai, you've reviewed a lot of great information for us. So I'm going to ask you a very hard question. Of all of these works and all the contributors, what are the one or two that you think are the most influential in terms of modern day ophthalmology practice?
What in the field of, I'm sorry, go say that again, please. I'm sorry.
If you had to pick one or two of the greatest works, or people who have worked in this field that you just went over.
In the fields of
Will be-
ophthalmology?
Yes.
Or the
Actually, if you could tell us both, because you are truly an ophthalmic historian. Who do you think are the one or two greatest people who've contributed to the history of ophthalmology, whether from the Islamic era or not?
Julius Hirschberg and Max Meyerhoff. Max Meyerhoff spent 28 years of his life in Cairo. And he edited العشر مقالات في العين ليوحنا لحوالين ابن إسحاق. One of the, but Meyerhoff, but Hirschberg wrote a huge volume. And I have a copy of it right here, but the volume I worked on with the Professor Lodi, the second volume. It took me 2.5 years to review the manuscript, corrected, edited, and then we had to publish it, 1985, in English. It used to be in German language.
So Dr. Wafai, I have a question is that, how can we of course, the Arabic world will be benefiting from your contributions, but how can we make it universal by getting them translated into English?
I don't know if you have automatic auto translator or if you have something. I wish that could be done. I tried a few years ago but it's not easy for me. Now I'm writing a book. This is something I'm writing a book right now about the transfer of the Islamic civilization into Latin Europe. Who translated what? And who stole the translation, the book, and claimed it to himself? And who gave credit to the original author? But believe me, with my poor English, it's not easy. I wish somebody can come to me and say, listen, I can take your hand, I can take the rough draft, and we can work on it. I wish, but I'm trying my best.
Inshallah, this is one of the aims of the NIMS, and this is exactly what we would like to do, is we would like to get these translated for the wider audience of the world, because as you know that currently English is the lingua franca of the world. So
I wish, but when I put them on if you want, I'll be happy to send you a copy of all of the books. But if you when I put
we would definitely like a digitized copy of your book for our NIMS library in Chicago. So we would definitely, and we would be very glad to undertake the printing of the digitized books so that we have them in hard copy in the library itself. So I would be very appreciative of that.
Fine. I have no objection. Whatever you want, I'll be happy. They are on the computer. I just press the button and they will be in your place.
Inshallah.
That would be great.
Later on. I think the time is sort of flying on. It was such an interesting talk that we've gone beyond our normal hour of discussion. So I think I'll call it to a close. Again, I thank you everybody for participating. You are welcome to come and join the NIMS website. We have many more discussions that have taken place there. We have great lectures already recorded and available for you. So all these presentations have been recorded and they'll be available to you so that you can go and watch them at your leisure. And if you have any questions, you can email us. All our emails are also published in the website. So you can be easily going there and talking to us. Or we have our executive director, Alia, who's very, very energetic and will be following up any question that you might have. Thank you again and have a great day.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
And we'll be playing a short video before everyone goes from NIMS.
Nagamia Institute of Islamic Medicine and Sciences, formerly known as the International Institute of Islamic Medicine, aims to bring alive discoveries and inventions in medicine and other sciences. Through exhibitions, storytelling, and modern technology. We are a network of academics, historians, scientists, and physicians with deep subject matter expertise. We are eager to share our knowledge to create experiences that produce a better understanding of the Islamic ethos and the contributions of Muslims to medicine and other sciences. We invite you to join us to promote a scientific mindset and to inspire excellence in generations to come.
Thank you so much. I'll just pass it over to Dr. Nagamia, but I wanted to thank everyone, say assalamu alaikum to you, please to wish you and your families to stay safe, wear a mask, and please get vaccinated as soon as you can. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you, Dr. Muna.